Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser currently here in Maple Bay, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up sort of endlessly for some ambitious cruising. And currently we're on some, well, modest cruising. So we're going to be around the Gulf Islands for the next little while. So if that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. We'd love to have you. Well, finally in the water and cruising. How fabulous, isn't it? I'm standing aboard the Alden Altair, owned by the shipwright Scott, you've all met. Port side here is Lloyd and his beautiful little monk that I think you've been familiar with in the yard. And of course, over my shoulder is MV Geordie. And we've been rafted up here on Scott's mooring in Maple Bay for a couple of days, doing some last minute little repairs to this and that, finishing up some of the wiring on Lloyd's boat and such. Having a really lovely kind of relaxing time. I realize you're looking straight into the sun, so you probably can't see too much. Lovely little place to be here in Maple Bay. There is a pub just up the hill here and provisioning not too far away. So we're going to jump back in time, as we often do, to figure out how to get you back to here. It's been a ride. I know you're all curious. The bilge pump on MV Geordie is now cycling for about 2 seconds, about every 4.5 minutes. Not bad. Okay, with those drying, I have a task that I've been putting off. My truck, my beautiful truck, which I love, is also a valuable storage resource. It now has 12 bins in it of various storage that I'm not going to need while I'm cruising. It's actually mostly domestic stuff. I think it's, well, cooking stuff and stuff like that. Anyway, what I also have to put in here is all the remaining steam bending oak, because it's still in my outdoor water tank here underneath this mess here. It's actually still getting pretty wet. The problem is it's in 12-foot lengths, and I have to be able to store it somehow for the next year almost, and make sure that it doesn't twist or anything like that. So I have to cut it, and I have to cut it in such a way that it's going to be appropriate lengths for the future use in the boat. Now I've done some figuring out for that, so I think I'm okay, but there's no doubt it's stressful. Okay, so bed of my truck is 6 feet long. I am going to make a pile right up in here and tape them all together. Too much information, I'm just going to do it. Oh, this is an interesting piece of wood. This is the frame that I broke. If some of you will remember when I was putting frames in, I broke one. Well, this is why I'll never be a shipwright. I didn't do a very good job of grading this piece of wood. Well, no wonder it was going to break. Yeah. Anyway, so that's scrap. There you go. Nice, somewhat wet oak. Okay, let's start hauling this all out of here and strapping it together before it gets all squirrely. So the truck bed is about 6'6" deep at the bottom. It actually tapers up, but I'm going to start with 6'4", because if I cut too much, make them too long, the resulting piece is no good to me either. This is going to be a bigger project than I thought. The ones that were well underwater are really a mess. I'm going to have to wash these. Oh, yeah.
Well, good morning. I've been going flat out today. It's the day before I launch, and I'm just finishing screwing down the 2 battery trays, which is going really, really well. And I'm happy about that. So in just a few minutes, I'll be able to show you exactly how this whole configuration works, but it's coming together really, really nicely. Alright then, the batteries are in, so pleased with that. And as I think I mentioned, for servicing they can slide aft here where I have full access to them, and I think that'll work out really well. Now we need some sort of sole down here for general working and storage. The start battery is going to go right at the front there, and but leaving room access to these through hulls that are right here. So all of that is going to be supported up a little bit off the floors for a couple of reasons. One is that I need a little bit of clearance for this through hull, the seacock. And two, I think I've mentioned that I'm going to have full engine box here, like a full box that completely surrounds the engine, which will be, I won't say airtight, but its own air space, and there'll be a big 4-inch evacuation blower sucking air out of there, which of course remove any sort of smells or whatever so they don't come into the boat, but it'll also force ventilation, sucking it out of the bilge. And so because the engine box is open to the bilge, the only air that can get into there is through the bilge, basically down the sides of the hull and under the tanks, past the stringers and into that space and up. Well, I want to extend that ventilation effect for the full length of the wheelhouse. So this sole that I'm going to put down on here won't be straight on the floors, as I mentioned. They'll be on whoops, too many pieces of wood here. They'll be on some battens that I'm going to put in here. These are yellow cedar, remains of the plank. Anyway, they'll tuck in there, and I made one for the middle, and I put a bunch of little divots into it with a Forstner bit so that it can go over these bolts here. I don't know if you're getting all this. I'm in a pretty tight area. And that will create an airspace so that the vacuum that's created in the engine bay, because there'll be a piece of plywood here, right, enclosing that, will also suck out air out of all these bays. And in fact, that's my principle for the whole boat. I'm going to have 3, actually 4 big blowers that evacuate all the bilge all the way through the boat in time. Anyway, now I just got to get the start battery in because we got to be able to start the motor. And on we come. So I've got the structure in for the start battery, and I've got 2 removable sole boards easily lift out to get access to the bilge should I ever need to, and they'll be held in place by little battens at each end, and it leaves perfect access through to operate the through hulls or the seacocks, but there's no chance anything can bump into them and dislodge them. So this has gone really well. I got to keep moving, unfortunately. Can't dilly in here, but I think this part is done. We got to move on to the fuel system and the exhaust and the muffler and connecting up the engine. There's lots to do yet. Okay, then I'm not sure you're going to be able to see what I'm up to here, but these 2 mahogany beams here, they cross the engine beds, and they actually also affix to the new stringers. And they're going to provide the support for a number of things. You can see down there the muffler is on a platform and it's perfectly aligned. Over on this side there'll be a platform in here for the hot water heater, which is currently tucked away out of the way so I could frame. And the main thing that this structure is for my Companionway steps. Oh, so excited. Oh Yes. I have not used these Companionway steps in 6 weeks. And ha-ha! Yes, indeed. That's the way you come into the wheelhouse. Okay. Now, actually, everything in this area that has to do with sole, including the sole panels and these Companionway steps, are all going to sit on a nice big thick strip of closed cell weather stripping foam. Does a couple of things. One, it evens out any irregularities in support, and it hopefully will somewhat reduce the vibration coming up from the engine. But time will tell. All right then, so now it's going to be connecting the fuel fill and the vent. Unfortunately, I recently installed a cleat pretty much exactly where the fuel fill is going to go, but that's okay. This cleat can come forward a little bit, and excessive holes in the deck are not a problem because the decks are going to be completely rebuilt soon. So cleat comes out, fuel fill goes where it needs to be, and then the cleat can go back. This will also be an excellent opportunity to install this cleat properly with a nice big backing plate. For those of you that are wooden boat enthusiasts, you'll notice that this boat doesn't have a shear clamp or shelf. Basically, the deck is solid 2-inch Douglas fir, and the frames are actually notched into the deck, giving it enough of a moment connection, a mechanical connection, that it doesn't need any sort of brace in here. It's really very strong because this is so thick. It really would be ridiculous to put little deck beams in for this 13-14-inch side deck. Anyway, I think it's kind of a neat detail in Monks. Now, the old fuel deck fills were right here, very close to the helm, both sides. I've just pulled this one out, and they're really quite nice. They're bronze, and so I'm going to reuse these, as I said, a little bit further back beyond that other deck fill, which is long since abandoned. Anyway, very nice. I'm really loving these nice straight runs up the deck fill. The old system I had was kind of circuitous, and it was easy for to sort of gurgle back while you were filling. This will be very satisfying. Double clamped as per ABYC. I don't know if you noticed, but this filler neck on here had a beautiful big barb fitting on it that the fabricator put on. Okay, my favorite butyl tape for the deck fill bedding. All right, then I have a vast assortment of stainless steel fittings to make the connections here at the tank. That's obviously the sender. These are both pickup tubes, so they're long tubes that go down, and they're 3/8 pipe. These are 2 3/4-inch pipe. This is the return. This is the vent. Now the vent is going to be T'd because I'm actually going to T across to both tanks at the vent, and then this will go up and out the side of the boat. The reason for that is, gosh forbid I'm ever in a situation where I am returning fuel to the wrong tank. In other words, not the tank I'm drawing it from, and I'm returning it to a tank that's already full. This return here will start to bleed back up and out the vent, but I don't want it going in the ocean, so it'll cross over this crossover pipe and drop back down into the other tank, guaranteeing I don't have a mess in the ocean. Way too much information. I know. I'm going to put it together, and then you'll see what I did. Hello there, folks. Well, this is the big moment. We're actually currently live streaming, but I forgot I wasn't doing any shooting for an episode, so I thought I'd come and get you. And we have a proper archive of the launch online. So here's the travel lift coming in. Scott, who's joining me for the launch, and he's currently managing the live stream. It's weird, eh? Technology, that's filming us doing a live stream. I don't know. Oh, moments away. We got it a little crooked. I'm trying to figure out what's going to be tipping over in my fridge. Okay, a little bit for the sea,
A little bit for me.
a little bit for the ship, and a little bit for me.
There you go. Cheers, Peter.
Cheers, mate. Okay, let's go aboard. This is it. What do you think, man? Well, this isn't incredibly meaningful anymore, but all these things are done, including the big cleanup and the launch. So really, as the final farewell to the bulkhead of reality, all I really have is stop sinking. Well, hi there. So today is wiring up the high current. In other words, the big fat wires. Isn't that the shortest wire? I'm sure it's the shortest wire I've ever made. Anyway, the big fat heavy wires, which I'm using double-aught, good for 200 amps, from the battery banks in the under the wheelhouse, through and around into my main high current distribution panel, which is underneath my nav seat. And as I mentioned in the short the other day, it's kind of a shame to have to build this into interim cabinetry, but I'm satisfied that all the work I do here can simply be unscrewed from this panel and screwed back onto the mahogany side of the future cabinet that's going to go here. So this is going really well. It's just sort of slow. Fair amount of time spent in design, making sure it's really neat and tidy, which is what I really like. Anyway, I'll bring you along for the ride. That's a very short wire. Okay, so this wire is to connect the house side of the battery switch setup to the main inside positive bus bar, which is right here under my left hand. And this is the positive bus bar, and from here the main current loads are obviously the windlass, the inverter, and then the lesser load is the main DC panel. And this will be the negative interior bus bar, which the main loads are the inverter, the windlass, and then there'll be a wire to the batteries, and then the regular negative to the regular panel. Well, hey there, I just realized I'm fairly far through this wiring project and I haven't actually shown you the process of making up a high current cable. This is double-aught, or 2/0. This is good for 200 amps at, well, way less than I need, at 10 feet at 3%, but at 10% is probably good to about 60 feet. But anyway, it's plenty for what I'm doing. I'm considering this boat a 200 amp boat. So the process of stripping it is I'm using an Olfa blade, and the trick is when you cut around here, A, don't cut through, and B, don't start making a spiral cut way up into the air and down again, and then in the other direction so that you can peel off the end. And you should have very few extra little strands as long as you've been very relatively careful as you did that. Okay, so we're taking off the depth of the insert for the lug. So these are crimpable lugs. I'll crimp them with my hydraulic crimper, and they're sized for the cable, in this case double-aught, and they're sized for the stud it's going to go on to, in this case 5/16 for the battery. We're making a battery interconnect. So put that on there, being very careful not to catch any of the strands. Grab your favorite little hydraulic crimper and set the right dies, of course. And because the crimper is metric, you have to play around a bit at first to find just the right set of dies, because it doesn't say double-aught on it, for instance. Okay, give that a good squeeze. And give it a little extra. Yeah! This was cheap on Amazon, and I have to admit, it's been absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we have a crimp connection. Excellent. So next would be the shrink tube. Which in this case will fit over the end. Now, not every wired connection you do, the shrink tube will fit over the end. So if you don't remember to put it on first, you have one last chance to put it on the wrong end if you haven't put both lugs on. But in this case, it fits over. Excellent. Hairdryer. Now, I will happily acknowledge in this case, I was a bit skimpy with the shrink tube. I should have been down a little bit further, but the main reason for it is to reduce the amount of conductible material around whatever you're working on, less chance of something touching something conductible. It also provides a little bit of strain relief, but in the interconnects in the battery, that won't matter at all. Okay, then instead of getting really concerned about pre-measuring. I'm going to put this on one stud on one battery. I'm going to hold the other lug up and put it on the other stud of the battery, and I'm going to make a little mark where I got to nick it right at the end of the ferrule here. Now I'll be right back. All right, so there's my mark, and I'm going to cut it with this cable shear. This is good up until double aught. Well, the neat thing about that is it will cut double aught cable, but not easily. I actually have to push it against the floor and put my entire weight on it, so you'll miss the fun part of this. It does do a very nice clean cut though. And then because it sort of pinched it a bit, I just sort of pinch it back round again before I repeat the process of stripping it. And on with the lug. Okay, now when you're setting up cables, especially short ones, make sure that you orient the lugs the way they're going to be in use, because this cable is remarkably difficult to twist. If you'd put it together this way and expected to twist it to that way in the battery case, you'd be sorely mistaken. So try to get them close. Even with longer cables, you'd be surprised. So can you all hear the pump cycling? Yes, indeed. If you've got your stopwatches out, it's cycling at around 30% now, at about 3 seconds on, 7 seconds off, or it was earlier. I had the pumps off for a little bit while I did some wiring, so it may be still a bit full in the bilge, catching up. Okay, Arrgh. Nicely crimped. Shrink tube, I'll try to do a slightly better job of aligning the shrink tube this time. That's a little more Bristol. Okay, so because it's really hot, I don't want to stress it too much at this point, so I let this cable cool while I install the previous cable, which is still cooling. It's kind of like the old galloping gourmet chef that, you know, would put one thing in the oven and take it right out a second later because it was already pre-cooked. All right then, I'm going to take a break now, but I just wanted to show you basically where I was. I'm still a ways from done, but the bulk of this heavy stuff is done, and I have new circuits up into the panel, which again are not entirely finalized. Back here we're pretty much done as well, all the interconnects in, all the main bus in. Really, the last thing to do is just add the big main 250 amp main fuse. And I have enough wire for that, thank goodness. And but I just have to run over to the store and get 2 more lugs, believe it or not, and then I'll be done. Well, hello and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to you today from the beautiful Ladysmith Community Marina here in Ladysmith, British Columbia, and the Chris Craft Rendezvous event, which I have been so graciously invited to attend, as well as Lloyd. So we have a couple of monks here, and we've had a really great couple of days with some really great people. Let's get straight to the beer. This is from Wolf Breweries. It's the Golden Honey Ale, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right then, well, I realize the episode you just watched is a week and a half old, and I like to think of myself as a real-time YouTuber, so we'll see what we can do about catching up. But to be fair, this last week is probably going to be known as the Lost Week, because the level of decompression and relaxation was much overdue, and I didn't actually shoot all that much stuff, but we'll make sure you have something for next week's episode for sure. Okay, so Wolf Breweries Honey Golden. Exactly what I'm going for right this minute. Perfect, so yummy. Let's just get straight to this, shall we? Last week's winner of a Travels with Geordie t-shirt was Jacqueline Cardwell. So Jacqueline, get a hold of me. We'll make sure you get your shirt. And cheers to you, Jacqueline. We had a new patron came on in the last week, Michael Cluton. Thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate it. And a new supporter via PayPal, and that was Joseph Roos. Cheers to you, Joseph. Off the Amazon wish list, a really fun item. This Holley diesel safe fuel pump will be part of the fuel polishing system, and I'm very grateful to have it. And we'll be setting up the fuel polishing system shortly after the cruise, probably. Anyway, next couple of weeks, who knows. Really looking forward to setting that up as well. And that came from Scott Kuhn. Thank you so much, Scott. And all you need now, if you haven't already guessed, the word of the week this week will be relaxed.
because that's what I am, and I hope you all too. Cheers. See ya next week, or maybe